What do you mean my account is overdrawn? That's impossible, I exclaimed, feigning shock as Brandon's sister unleashed her fury about the rent money he had promised her. He did what? When? I maintained my composure, allowing her to think I was just discovering my husband's deceit. My name is Isla Thompson, and my husband Brandon has just turned into one of the biggest mistakes of my life. But not in the way he imagines. That Sunday morning, as I stirred awake to find an empty bed and a harsh note affixed to the fridge, it hit me like a slap in the face, despite knowing it was coming.
Goodbye.
Never loved you anyway. Real classy, Brandon. I'm a forensic accountant based in Milwaukee, and for the past 15 years, I've been on the front lines, tracking down financial fraud for some of the largest corporations in the Midwest. 3 months ago, when my husband began to exhibit signs of plotting his great escape, it was clear he was up against someone who knew the game well. The initial warning sign? His newfound curiosity about our retirement accounts is a stark contrast to his previous indifference towards our finances. Following that were the clandestine phone calls, the mysterious disappearances, and the way he would swiftly switch off his computer screen the moment I entered the room. Classic indicators of someone gearing up to make a run for it. I had witnessed this scenario countless times in my profession. What Brandon failed to understand was that every questionable transaction, every concealed purchase, and every effort to discreetly shift our funds did not escape my notice. Every move he made in his attempt to rob me was meticulously documented, captured in photographs, and promptly sent to my lawyer. By the time he left that note, convinced he had executed the perfect getaway, I had already transferred our savings, flagged our accounts, and strategized for every possible scenario he might attempt. So, when the fraud alerts began pouring into my phone that Monday morning, a smile crept across my face. Brandon believed he was 10 steps ahead, completely unaware that he was stepping right into a trap of his own design. The phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, declined transactions, failed withdrawal attempts, and frozen accounts. Each alert was like a symphony to my ears. As my hand grazed the folder labeled "just in case" on my desk, I could feel the weight of months of evidence contained within evidence that could obliterate not only his escape plan, but also his entire future. Listening to his sister's frantic voice on the phone, a flicker of sympathy crossed my mind. Almost. You may assume I was crushed upon discovering that my husband of 8 years never truly loved me. But here's the intriguing aspect of being a forensic accountant. You become adept at recognizing patterns. Some may believe they're being smart by concealing their actions, but money always reveals its path, without fail. And as for Brandon, he scattered clues all around. 6 years ago, at a charity gala, I crossed paths with Brandon. He exuded charm and success, or at least that's what he professed, presenting himself as someone who had it all figured out. With a career as an investment advisor, a sleek car, and grand visions of a shared future, he certainly made an impression. His confidence and ambition truly left an impression on me. Reflecting on it now, I realize I should have picked up on how he consistently dodged inquiries about his clients and how elusive he was regarding his history. The initial 3 years seemed promising, or at least that's what I believed. We purchased a stunning home in the Milwaukee suburbs, envisioned exciting getaways, and discussed the possibility of starting a family. Yet, there were always these subtle inconsistencies, such as his defensiveness whenever I inquired about his student loans or his tendency to divert the conversation when I brought up meeting his former colleagues. "You don't trust me?" he would respond, flipping the situation back onto me. "Why is it necessary for you to know every detail? Do you really think I can't manage my own finances?" It's a classic case of manipulation. I've witnessed it countless times in my career, where individuals employ emotional leverage to sidestep financial honesty. Yet, I chose to overlook it because I wanted to believe in our relationship in him. That marked the beginning of my errors. Following that, the unmistakable signs started to appear. Last Christmas, he was adamant about keeping our holiday spending in separate accounts. "It'll be more romantic if we surprise each other," he said. Yet, I couldn't help but notice the credit card statements he believed were concealed, revealing purchases from upscale jewelry stores. Jewelry that never made its way to me. The weekend business trips that seemed to lack any conferences I could uncover. The enigmatic calls from numbers that consistently went directly to voicemail whenever I was nearby. While most wives might have addressed their husbands right away, I am not like most wives. Instead, I began to pull bank statements, meticulously tracking transactions and constructing a solid case. Each time he believed he was successfully covering his tracks, he inadvertently provided me with even more evidence. I observed as he gradually attempted to deplete our accounts, all while thinking I was completely unaware of his actions. "Working late again?" he would ask, pretending to care as I sat at my computer. "Just catching up on some cases," I'd respond, leaving out the fact that the case I was focused on was his. The tipping point arrived 3 weeks ago. I was burning the midnight oil, truly late this time, when my colleague Susan dashed over to my desk. Her complexion was ashen, and she gripped her phone as if it were a venomous creature. "Isla, you have to see this," she urged, her voice trembling. As I delved into the Thompson case files, something caught my eye. It was about Brandon. A wave of unease washed over me as I glanced at her screen. There it was. Brandon's name was connected to a web of suspicious transactions we were delving into. Not as a witness or a victim, but as a person of interest. The patterns I had been observing in our personal lives were also evident in his professional interactions. He wasn't merely preparing to part ways with me. He was escaping from something far more significant. "There's more," Susan whispered, her fingers gliding over the documents. "He's been implicated in 3 other fraud investigations. Different states, different names, but the same method. He targets successful women, marries them, and then vanishes with their money. It all began in Phoenix, right before his relocation to Milwaukee. The pieces began to align. The charm, the secrecy, the abrupt focus on our finances, it was all part of his established pattern. I wasn't his wife. I was his next target. Little did he know, his latest mark was an expert in ensnaring individuals just like him. That night, I remained in our kitchen until the first light of dawn, examining everything with a newfound perspective. The facade of the loving husband, the meticulous manipulation, the gradual attempts to distance me from my friends and family, it all became strikingly evident. I couldn't help but laugh, not out of amusement, but due to the overwhelming irony of it all. He had chosen the wrong woman to deceive. For the next 3 weeks, I meticulously planned my moves. Each morning, I would bid him farewell with a kiss, masking the storm brewing beneath the surface. Every night, I would hear his fabrications about work, all while meticulously recording each questionable transaction. I transferred our savings, reached out to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and compiled evidence that would not only safeguard me, but also assist his former victims. "You seem different lately," he remarked one evening, scrutinizing my expression. "Is everything okay?" I smiled, reflecting on the trap I had laid, knowing that his own arrogance would ultimately lead to his undoing. "Just feeling a bit worn out from work," I responded. "You know how it can be during this season." He nodded with a sympathetic expression, likely believing I was toiling away to earn more money for him to take. If he had been more observant, he might have caught the sparkle in my eye, the one that revealed I was fully aware of his intentions. Yet, con artists like Brandon rarely consider the possibility that they could be the ones getting duped. And that's the intriguing aspect of individuals who thrive on deception. They often fail to anticipate when the tables will turn. The very next morning after Brandon vanished, his schemes began to materialize just as he had envisioned. The initial call was from our bank, alerting us to some unusual activity, multiple attempts at withdrawals. Credit cards were maxed out. The second call came from his sister Kelly, who was in a frenzy over the money he had borrowed. The third call was from a woman named Rachel Clark in Phoenix, inquiring if I had any information about her husband's whereabouts. Her husband. The word struck me like a sudden chill. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" I tightened my grip on the phone, taking a seat at my kitchen table. "Brandon Murphy. He remains my husband in the eyes of the law," Rachel said, her voice laced with frustration. 3 years ago, he vanished with my savings. I've been keeping an eye on him ever since. A smile crept onto my face, despite my better judgment. "You see, here he goes by the name Brandon Thompson, and believe it or not, I've been anticipating your call all along." For the next hour, Rachel and I exchanged our findings. Identical charming smiles, the same investment advisor narrative, and a familiar pattern of gradually depleting accounts before vanishing. However, this time, there was one significant twist. I've collected all the evidence needed to take him down, I said to her, but I can't do it alone. I need your help to catch him. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. I'm sorry, can we talk? Just one last time? Perfect. He was following the pattern I discovered in Rachel's case, reaching out after the initial disappearance, trying to manipulate his way into one last chance to access any remaining funds. I showed the text to my lawyer, who was already preparing our counterattack. Let's set the trap, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I made my way to the coffee shop downtown to meet Brandon. Upon my arrival, I found him already seated, wearing an expression that perfectly conveyed his regret. His eyes were red, his clothes slightly rumpled, embodying the essence of a man who had clearly made a grave error. Isla, I'm so sorry, he started, extending his hand across the table. I've been going through some things, dealing with some bad investments. Panic surged through me as I instinctively withdrew my hand, nailing my role with precision. How deep in trouble are you, Brandon? I noticed a spark in his eyes, just a brief glimmer, but it didn't escape my attention. He believed I was buying into it. Around $200,000 is at stake, but I have a strategy to set things right. All I need is access to our emergency fund. I feigned deep thought, observing him squirm in discomfort. The emergency fund, yes, the very one you attempted to deplete just yesterday? His expression dropped momentarily before he regained his composure. That was a misstep. I wasn't thinking clearly. But if you help me now, I promise. To what? To vanish once more? Or to linger just long enough to empty my accounts like you did to Rachel in Phoenix? The color drained from his face. For the very first time I had ever seen him, Brandon Thompson or Murphy or whatever his actual name might be, appeared truly taken aback. You see, the amusing part is, I continued as I slid a folder across the table. If you had bothered to do your homework, you might have figured out that pilfering from a forensic accountant wasn't exactly your brightest idea. At that moment, 2 FBI agents made their way to our table. I rose to my feet, adjusting my jacket with a sense of urgency. And Brandon? It might be a good idea to get in touch with a lawyer. A perfect moment. Just as Brandon was being escorted by the FBI agents, my phone buzzed with a call from Susan. Her timing was impeccable. We've got him, she declared, her voice brimming with triumph. The team has just wrapped up their analysis of those offshore accounts you pointed out. Brandon isn't merely orchestrating a marriage scam. He has been running an enormous Ponzi scheme, and we're talking about fraud amounting to millions. I observed from the coffee shop window as Brandon was taken away in a federal vehicle. He appeared diminutive now, a stark contrast to the self-assured man who believed he had outwitted me. How many victims? I inquired, fully aware that the response would be grim. 23 to date, across 5 states. 12 marriages, each to accomplished women in the world of finance. But wait, there's a twist. He had something much grander in mind. Evidence has emerged of a new investment firm he was in the process of establishing. He intended to leverage your credentials and reputation to attract high-net-worth clients. It made me reflect on those late nights when he would inquire about my cases, displaying an unexpected interest in my work. He wasn't offering support. Instead, he was collecting intel, scheming to undermine my professional reputation for his grandest con yet. The irony, I remarked, is that had he not let his greed take over, had he simply continued with his typical marriage scam, he might have slipped away once more. But no, he just had to escalate the stakes. But wait, there's more.
Susan went on.
Do you recall that country club membership he was so adamant about last year? Well, it turns out he was using it to connect with his next target, Caroline Mitchell, the hedge fund manager. He was already setting the stage for his next grand vanishing act. Meanwhile, every individual he believed he was controlling had been collaborating, constructing an unassailable case against him. Have you heard from his sister Kelly? I inquired, recalling her desperate call this morning. That's another intriguing angle, Susan responded. It turns out she isn't his sister at all. Instead, She's an accomplice. Together, they've been orchestrating this scam for years. She embodies the role of the desperate sister, urgently pleading for money just before he vanishes. As we speak, she's being picked up in Chicago. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing every detail. The extent of Brandon's deception was truly astonishing, yet equally remarkable was his obliviousness. He had been so consumed with upholding his fabrications that he failed to see the snare tightening around him. And there's one more detail, Susan interjected. We uncovered his true identity. His name isn't Brandon Thompson or Murphy, it's Brandon Roberts, and he's been on the run for fraud in Canada since 2015. A smile crept across my face as I envisioned the extensive case file waiting for me on my desk. Well, Brandon Roberts, get ready for your worst nightmare. Just as I was preparing to return to the office, my phone buzzed once more. This time, it was a message from an unfamiliar number. You might think you're smart, but you have no clue what's on the horizon. Check your email. The message was accompanied by an email filled with detailed photos of me with my family, my daily routines, and even shots taken through my home windows. A chill ran down my spine. Not from fear, but from anger. Brandon had brought someone in to keep an eye on me. I sent all the details to Susan and my lawyer, then reached out to the FBI agent overseeing Brandon's case. Agent Morrison? It looks like we have another player in this unfolding drama. She responded promptly, confirming that she was already on it. The photos originated from an IP address under our surveillance. It leads back to James Foster, who was Brandon's former cellmate during a short time in Phoenix. He has been serving as Brandon's enforcer, intimidating anyone who dares to get too close to revealing the operation. I found myself thinking about Rachel Clark, questioning if this was the reason she had hesitated to speak up. Where could he be now? That's the dilemma. We can't track him down, but he's likely. Agent Morrison paused abruptly. Wait a second. There's activity on one of Brandon's frozen accounts. It looks like someone is attempting to access it from inside your home. My house. The place where I had left my laptop open. I called Rachel right away. Is everything okay there? We have a situation, she whispered. Kelly's here. She must have had a key. She's attempting to gain access to Brandon's accounts using your computer. Kelly, the imposter sister, who was meant to be in custody in Chicago. My thoughts raced through the endless possibilities. Either she had managed to escape, or... Rachel, you need to get out of there immediately. Kelly isn't acting alone. I heard a crash in the background, followed by Rachel's quick gasp. Too late. Foster's here too. My heart raced, yet my mind stayed sharp. This was precisely the kind of bold maneuver I had expected. Rachel, do you recall our conversation? The moment has arrived. I could hear Rachel's steady voice through the phone. Hey Kelly, before you make any rash decisions, you might want to take a look at what's displayed on that screen. I couldn't help but smile, fully aware of what they were witnessing. Every file, every account, every shred of evidence wasn't merely saved on my laptop. It was being broadcast live to the FBI servers, and the entire house was under watch with agents positioned close by. It's over, I heard Rachel say. Look outside. The sound of sirens filled the background as FBI agents swarmed my house. In just a matter of minutes, both Kelly and Foster were apprehended, and Rachel was out of harm's way. As I made my way home, I discovered Agent Morrison was already there, waiting for me. Quite a performance, she remarked. You anticipated they would pull a stunt like this? Individuals like Brandon, Kelly, and Foster tend to get frantic when the pressure mounts. They're accustomed to having the upper hand, and the thought of losing it sends them into a tailspin. I gazed at my home, now transformed into a crime scene. It was essential to create the illusion of a final opportunity for them to succeed. With this attempted break-in and the accompanying threats, we can now include witness intimidation and conspiracy charges in their growing list. Agent Morrison smiled. Your trap was executed flawlessly. I can picture Brandon in his cell, still clinging to the hope that he could charm his way out of this situation. Little does he know, his last-ditch effort has provided us with all the evidence we need to make sure he never deceives anyone again. 2 months later, I found myself in the courtroom, witnessing the unraveling of Brandon's life. The The once confident smile had vanished, replaced by a profound expression of defeat as the judge delivered the verdict. Brandon Roberts, convicted of multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and witness intimidation, this court hereby sentences you to 25 years in federal prison. I locked eyes with him as they escorted him out. In that fleeting moment, his facade crumbled, revealing the sheer panic underneath. The same man who had scrawled "Never loved you anyway" on a note stuck to my fridge now confronted a future where love was far from his mind. Kelly and Foster faced a tough situation. They opted for plea deals, yet they would still spend a considerable amount of time behind bars. In exchange for their agreements, they revealed crucial evidence against Brandon's entire network, shedding light on operations spanning 3 countries. Rachel sat beside me, her grip tightening around my hand as Brandon's victims, my unexpected sisters in survival, rose one by one to deliver their impact statements. Each woman recounted a tale of betrayal, yet concluded with a resounding note of triumph. We hadn't just achieved justice, we had reclaimed our power. Following the sentencing, Agent Morrison came up to me, a smile on his face. "The Bureau could really benefit from someone with your talents. Have you ever thought about consulting for us?" I reflected on all the other Brandons out there, the scammers who believed they were too smart to be caught. You know what? I think I'd like that. As I stepped out of the courthouse and into the bright Milwaukee sunshine, a wave of lightness washed over me, something I hadn't felt in years. Brandon thought he had broken me, but in reality, he had only forged my strength. And now a new mission unfolded before me, to ensure he would be the last con man to underestimate a woman with a talent for numbers and a mind for justice. 6 months after Brandon's sentencing, I found myself at a podium in a bustling conference room at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division in Milwaukee. Behind me, a presentation showcased what they now referred to as the Thompson case, though neither his real name nor mine held any significance anymore. I reclaimed my maiden name, distancing myself from Brandon's various identities. I addressed the room filled with agents and analysts stating, "The contemporary con artist doesn't rely on a weapon. Instead, they wield trust, manipulation, and technology, yet they inevitably leave a trace behind. All you need is the right perspective." The initiative I created in collaboration with the FBI was already yielding impressive outcomes. In just the last month, 3 significant romance scam operations have been dismantled. Rachel emerged as one of our most invaluable consultants, her expertise shedding light on the methods these predators use to select their targets. Following the presentation, I glanced at my phone and discovered a message from Susan. Another victim of Brandon's had been found in Vancouver. In a situation unlike any other, she found herself stripped of everything: her home, her savings, her business. Yet, this time, there was a glimmer of hope as we stood ready to assist her in reclaiming what had been taken. The forensic team had made a breakthrough, successfully decrypting Brandon's files and uncovering hidden accounts scattered across the globe. Brandon had spent his life taking from strong women, but ultimately, he had unwittingly forged something formidable: a network of survivors transformed into warriors, all committed to dismantling men like him. Sometimes, the most profound revenge isn't merely about survival, it's about thriving.